What's up, Rebel Nation? It's Cam Wicker from the Rebel Walk, co-host of the podcast that you're tuned into right now, The Rebel Talk. In this week's episode, Zach and I come back with another weekly recap of Ole Miss sports, beginning the episode with men's and women's basketball and how they're faring in the transfer portal cycle so far. We turn the page to Ole Miss football and how they're ending spring practice, just talking about some holes that we think the roster needs to be filled with, the NFL draft coming up, and also the recent two high school commits that Ole Miss football just picked up. We then look into Ole Miss baseball and how they lost the series this past weekend to number 5 Tennessee and the return of Liam Doyle and Andrew Fisher. We then turn the page to previewing South Carolina and talking just a little bit about our surprises about Ole Miss baseball and overall thoughts so far. With that being said, you can skip through this episode as it's broken into 4 sections with men's, women's basketball, football, and then baseball. Make sure to leave a like and comment on this episode and subscribe to the YouTube channel and enjoy the show. Welcome back, Rebel fans. You're listening to another episode of the Rebel Talk presented by the Rebel Walk. I'm Cam Wicker, and as always, I'm here with Zach Moreth. Today, we're here to discuss a little bit of Ole Miss sports, really just without the past week. A lot of stuff going on, really, in the men's basketball world, women's basketball world, baseball. I mean, stuff going on in football too, Zach. It seems like it's a dead period at times, but then you see some news on social media, and it's like Ole Miss gained some traction with this player in the portal, or Ole Miss is linked to this player in the portal, and then Ole Miss baseball plays Tennessee this past weekend. So like it's getting close to the end of the semester. We're getting close to the summertime, where it's that dead time in sports. But it seems like with especially this new era of college sports, with the way the transfer portal is, it never sleeps. College sports never sleeps. And that brings me right into college basketball. On the men's side of things, a lot of questions for the Ole Miss basketball team right now, Zach. It seems like a lot of fans are getting impatient. And I want to refer to, I think it was Caleb Sailors who tweeted this out, that Ole Miss fans might need to calm down just a little bit, because around this time last year is when Malik Dio committed. About April, I think it was like April 15th, 17th, somewhere around there last year, a little after spring ball for football, when Malik Dio was on campus last year as well for that spring games or whatever they had last year in the Vaught. And then Padula and Dre Davis come later in the portal cycle. Obviously, Ole Miss gets Corey Chest. We talked about that with Malik Dio in the podcast last week. If you haven't looked at that podcast, go check out that. That's out right now on YouTube with Malik Dio, Ole Miss forward, who returned to Oxford this coming up season. But we talked about Corey just a little bit with him. It seems like Malik Dia is excited for him. Malik Dia mentioned in that podcast that Ole Miss is kind of pushing towards getting some players, but it seems like every time Ole Miss gains some traction with some guys, they commit somewhere else. What are your thoughts on that, Zach?
It's really weird, man. And, quick shout out to our guy TJ, who is sending us probably 20, 30 names a day, it feels like. But it's just this weird era of college sports where your guy can come to Ole Miss and then get a phone call from another school offering him $1 million or whatever it may be, and boom, the visit doesn't even matter. It doesn't matter if he likes the campus, if they're recruiting him well, if he has good relationships. It's quite literally the complete opposite of what college sports were raised on. You go back 15, 20 years, kids are going to the school that they love, playing for a staff that they enjoy to be around. It's not the case anymore. It's who has the biggest price tag. And to be honest, I'm impatient as well. I think a lot of the younger generation is we get things quickly and we want players quickly. Chris Beard just got a really nice extension. We held him off from all the oil money and all the weird folks over at Texas A&M. And we're sitting here waiting for all these commits. But, Caleb Sailor's great tweet. Shout out to Caleb. It's our guy. But, yeah, it's going to take some time here, Cam. And if we can somehow afford Sean Padula, Dre Davis, Malik Dia, and then go and return Matt Morrell last year with a larger budget, you'd imagine that Chris Beard has a plan here. We know what his staff can do. And at the same time, I don't want to forget about Patton Pinkins and Tyler Jordan, two highly touted 6'6" for Pinkins and a 6'9" player in Tyler Jordan, who are going to come in and probably, have the potential to start here, but definitely get a lot of minutes off the bench. So I know, guys, trust me. I want commits every day. I'm like, right now there's 3 players or 4 players on the roster, whatever the case may be. We can't even field the damn team. So roster spots will be filled. The coaches know this. They're going to get filled, and they will be decent players as well. And even a guy like Davon Barnes, You pick him up I was not thrilled. I was like, oh, great. Like, he'll maybe be like a tiny role player. I don't even know if he's going to play. And then you look at the Sweet 16, and he's one of the best defenders on the team, Cam. So I think you got to trust the evaluations and the guys that Chris Beard's going to get. But yeah, it's definitely going to take some time here.
Absolutely. And Corey Chest, again, committed to Ole Miss about a little over a week ago now, 6'8", 220-pound forward. He grabs a lot of boards. He's a physical presence in the paint for Ole Miss. But Malik D is going to be leading this program next year. And we talked about that with Malik last week. And I've talked about it a lot off camera, just with fans who just want to know what's going on, what I think about Malik D next year. In my opinion, Malik Dia needs to be a 15, 16 point per game, 7 to 8 rebounds per game for this Ole Miss team to be where they want to be next year. It's going to have to be what you've seen out of Malik Dia early in SEC play, but on a consistent basis. I'm not saying he's got to be Janiah Broome. That's going to be hard to replicate. Obviously, Janiah Broome has a little bit more size than Malik Dia does, but Dia has proved throughout multiple cases last year that he can just put on a show and turn it on whenever he wants. And if he can just flip a switch next year and be consistent throughout the entire season, I think this Ole Miss team will be all right, considering who they're going to go pick up in the portal later in this portal cycle. And that brings me to another question, Zach. How's the Ordo Clef going to develop for this team? Malik Dia also talked about that last week. He's a heck of a shooter. And we saw that last year when at times where he could be a spark off the bench, more just like an energy guy, glue guy for that Ole Miss team last year at times. But next year, he's definitely going to be thrusted into a more veteran presence role. Just your overall thoughts on Eduardo Klafke and what you think about him next year.
With confidence, Klafke has the opportunity to be an SEC demon out there, Cam. I don't say that lightly because the kid's got all this talent, Chris Beard, when he was coming around to all the fraternity houses trying to get kids to go to the game, he was telling us how Klafke's dad is basically the Larry Bird of Brazil. So the talent's there. The athletic ability is there, and it's going to come with confidence. Look, I played basketball in middle school. I got an okay athletic ability. Haven't played against Klafke, but he's played against guys like me at the rec. And this kid is unbelievable. Okay, look, I know we're not probably college frat guys aren't SEC defenders, all right? But when he's got confidence and he's pulling up from everywhere from half court, it's night and day, Cam. And we saw his ability to shoot. Briefly, the shot that comes to mind is that game against Arkansas in Nashville for the SEC tournament. But look, man, he just has to gain confidence. I think he's got to put on some size as well, some mass. Obviously, he can't control his height, but definitely the potential to be a sharpshooter. I don't know if he'll be thrusted into that point guard role. I think he'll be similar to Juju Murray. So he can take the ball down the court if needed, but you want to find him some open looks along the floor and also see him, develop as a leader because despite him just being a sophomore, he came to Oxford early. Like he was basically with that team before the year of the Sweet 16. He was with them for like 2 to 3 months, I want to say. So in terms of leadership and production, I think he's got to take that step forward. But it starts with that mindset and confidence. So I'm fired up to see what happens with him next year.
Absolutely. And Eduardo Klafke is going to be a big part of that team next year for sure. I think that's all we got for the men's basketball side of things. Not a lot going on. We won't throw too many of those portal names at you guys right now, considering who knows if Ole Miss is actually going to get those guys. Like Zach said, these guys get phone calls all the time. Even when they're on visits, coaches are relentless when it comes to the transfer portal stuff. So if you want to check out any of the transfers that Ole Miss has got their eyes on, TJ Oxley did a really good job of the basketball transfer portal tracker for the rebelwalk.com. You can go over there, check that out. It's got a cover image of Chris Beard on it. It should be right at the top on the basketball section. Check that out. See who the Ole Miss is linked to. It's updated pretty much as quick as we can update it. Anything that you need for the men's side of things, you can go find that article from TJ on the rebelwalk.com. Moving into the women's side of things, portal season as well here. Very different feeling on the women's side of things for Team 51 now coming up next year. And I want to start off with Cody McMahon next year, 3rd overall player in the transfer portal at Ohio State. I mean, she was a player that was in conversation for Naismith Awards in the preseason coming into the season this season and averaged 16 points per game last season. She's Big Ten Freshman of the Year in 2023, all Big Ten first team in 24 and 25, all Big Ten second team in 23. I mean, she's one of the best players in the country, and Ole Miss landed her. It seemed like Coach O was really hyped up about this one. It seems like the fan base was really hyped up about this one, and it seems like this is your star player next year, Zach.
This is no joke, and it's not. I don't like saying this because I think there's so much culture and such good team chemistry on Team 50, but to depart some of those players and get some new faces really in the program, I think is a really great thing for Coach O and the Ole Miss fan base too. But Cody McMahon, what a huge get! 16 points per game. Cam mentioned it, but this thing that stands out for me is this girl can shoot the lights out. I mean, you go back to that UCLA game, it looked like the only thing that was going to propel Ole Miss to a win was making shots, and they couldn't. Shots were not falling, and that's when UCLA kind of drove away. But you get a girl who shoots 44% from the field, 37% from three. It's something that Coach Yo's been missing from these teams for so long, Cam. But look, I'm kind of curious. Is Yo stealing Beard's NIL here? No, I'm totally messing around. But she is crushing it, absolutely killing it, developing a really good portal class. And I want to talk about some of those other names that you want to dive into here as well, Cam.
Absolutely. That's diving into the next player, Tiana Thompson from Georgia Tech. Didn't play a ton last year for Georgia Tech, but a freshman, top 100 recruit coming out of high school, averaged 4 points per game last year for the Yellow Jackets, 21 appearances there. She had a career high in points versus Florida State with 19. Shot 8 for 11 in that game. She's a really good ball handler from the videos that I've seen of her just playing throughout the year. Georgia Tech last year handles the ball really well at that guard position. Obviously shoots it really well. We'll have to see how she fits into this role into this team next year. It's kind of hard to say that she's going to start with Caitlin Peterson getting picked up early in the transfer portal cycle at UCF. She's probably your point guard, and then obviously Sierra Chinu on the wing over there. But Tiana Thompson, that's a really good bench piece for this Ole Miss team, and really doesn't seem like Ole Miss is done yet in the portal yet either.
No, Cam, and I think that's the craziest part. Every graphic, it's a girl from a different Power 5 or Power 4 school, which is really difficult to do, especially in today's world of transfer portal era. And especially this year, a lot of those COVID seniors are finally starting to move on, or maybe a girl who had an additional red shirt. So I wasn't expecting the talent influx that we've seen in the portal, and not only in the portal, but coming to Ole Miss next year. I'm really, just excited to watch this team. Looking forward to, like you said, it's not even close to being done, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And it seems like Coach O is probably one of the best in the portal, just in all of college basketball. Kim Mulkey can throw that name in there as well. She tends to get a lot of players out of the portal as well. But it seems like every year, especially this year now, Coach O is just taking whoever she wants out of the portal. Like I said, doesn't seem like she's done yet. Still linked to some pretty big names, Ole Miss is on the women's side of things. And one more player I wanted to talk about who is currently on the Ole Miss roster. I know Ole Miss did lose a ton of players in the transfer portal cycle, but there is still a player on the Ole Miss roster that hasn't played much, and not a lot of people know stuff about her. I mean, Jador Young staying at Ole Miss, nothing really out about her leaving at all. 6'4" center. I think she appeared in a few games in non-conference as a freshman here. Didn't really play the back half of the season. Did not play at all last year. These were both due to injuries and then medically redshirting last year to keep her eligibility as a redshirt freshman coming into next year. So I guess she'll be a redshirt sophomore now. But number 3 player in South Carolina coming out of high school, Coach O took her away from South Carolina in that recruiting class. It seems like maybe this is the time that you introduce her to the world. You have a big lineup now with Christina Walla and Latasha Lattimore in the front court. Maybe you have Young off the bench. You lost Carissa Richardson in the portal to Mississippi State. So this could be your big off the bench for Ole Miss. I know Jayla Murray has some size too for Ole Miss coming out of the portal too. But Jador Young, I think, is a name that you'll have to keep an eye on if you're an Ole Miss fan and you don't know much about her on that side of things. I think that's all we got for the women's side of things as well. Not a lot going on right now that we can give you guys on men's basketball or women's side of things. I know one thing that I missed on the men's side of things, not much to do with the Ole Miss, but John Ball entered the portal just a week ago. He committed to UCF today. So best of luck to John Ball. Seems like that's a place where he'll probably get some playing time and get to develop his game a little more than what he did here this past year. I think about 17, 19 appearances, somewhere around there this past season for Ole Miss. Didn't play much down the stretch, though. Moving into spring football for Ole Miss, coming to an end this week, it seems like there's some holes to fill on this roster, to say the least, Zach. And that brings me straight to the defensive back room. This whole spring ball, we've only really seen TJ Banks and Cedric Beavers in those starting roles for Ole Miss. Nothing against those guys, but neither one of those guys have a SEC or Power 4 start. I mean, TJ Banks got some playing time late in the season last year. Cedric Beavers played a little bit of special teams, played JUCO for 2 seasons as well. But Jalen Braxton was kind of nowhere to be found in the back half of spring practice. Chris Graves, I don't know where Chris Graves went. He's still on the roster, but he's nowhere to be found either out there. So it's a very tough scene on the back end for this Ole Miss football team. We haven't seen a lot of live snaps with Ole Miss defense versus Ole Miss offense out there in our viewings, but it's probably safe to say that Austin Simmons and those veteran, really good wide receiver core for Ole Miss right now is probably tearing up that DB room for Ole Miss. The good thing is you got a lot of young players that are getting reps behind some of those older guys like TJ and Cedric Cedric Beavers. But both the veterans you went and got in the portal were safeties in Sage Ryan and Kapina Gashaikin. So, I mean, what do you do if you're Ole Miss? I mean, there's so many big names at the corner spot in the portal. Portal opens up here in a couple of days, Zach. Is corner really the main priority, or is it the only priority?
It's so crucial. And we saw, okay, so I'm going to try and explain this to the best of my ability. But when media goes outside for practice, we're able to see one live drive. I think the offense starts at the 25 of the practice field, and it's first team starters, and they go full. So the first week that I saw, the defense did an okay job. Matter of fact, I think they stopped them. But then the next week, it wasn't even fair. I mean, Austin Simmons was just dicing these fellas up. And then Deuce Alexander, oh my, did he moss Cedric Beavers?
Oh, man.
I'm just, no disrespect to Cedric. It happens, right? If I was playing DB, I'm sure I'd get baptized out there. But I mean, this was like grown man type catch. So shout out to Deuce. But Chris Graves, no disrespect to Chris, but we've been playing this game with him for 2 to 3 years now, right? So I don't know what's going on there, because he was a guy we thought was definitely going to be playing in the spring. So maybe it's an injury off the field problem. I don't know. Hopefully it gets sorted out. A couple guys here in the transfer portal, I think may have entered today. Jaden, I don't really know how to pronounce. There's interesting apostrophe in there. Nonetheless, last name's McBurrows from Michigan. Michigan defense is right next to what you saw from Ole Miss last year. Closest thing kind of to an NFL-style defense. Their coaching staff is second to none. And kid's got a ton of experience. A lot of good Big Ten experience. You know, if you look at the past 2 national champions, it kind of hurts me to say, but it's Michigan and Ohio State. So he's played in a pretty competitive conference and a lot of snaps there up north. And then the second guy is Saeed Gibbs from Georgia Tech. He was a freshman All-American in 2023. 2 guys right off the bat who I saw today, and I guarantee you I missed quite a few tweets about guys entering the portal. So, yeah, Cam, to answer your question, you need at least 2 starting cornerbacks so you can go out and add to this team, which is a difficult ask because, look, the spring portal, I can't remember many players, even from last year's team, who we got from the spring who came in and really made an impact. But I think it's a completely different situation, and you're kind of banking on this for the success of this defense against some really good quarterbacks in SEC play. But, you know, other than DBs, you're more than welcome to touch on them. But what else do you think Ole Miss should add here on April 16th through the 25th?
Absolutely. There's not a ton of other spots Ole Miss really, I think, will be looking at. It's going to be probably heavy DB. The good thing is for Ole Miss right now, there's players all around the country entering the portal on big-name programs. There's nobody on Ole Miss in sight entering the portal right now. Everyone's kind of staying put, I'm sure there will be a couple players from this Ole Miss roster in the spring that will enter the portal at some point. But the good news is right now you don't have a plethora of players just jumping into the portal at will. I mean, we know what's happening over there in Knoxville with the Volunteers. Not so good, not as good as their baseball side of things on the football side of things over there in Knoxville. So, I mean, the good news is for Ole Miss, none of that's happening here. I think a big question for Ole Miss is, do you need some more depth at quarterback? I mean, I know you have A.J. Maddox. I know you have Pierce Clarkson. But do you need more depth at quarterback? Probably so. Maybe don't go get someone that you're like maybe Spencer Sanders per se and tell him that he's going to be able to compete for the job, and then he sits behind Dart. We all know how that worked out. But
Now he's like,
maybe
I'm not even going to say
it. maybe don't do that, but maybe go get someone who can sit behind Simmons for a little while, or someone that knows he's not going to get a starting role at a big program, but wants to go make some money. Maybe go get someone like that, just so you have someone with at least some experience or the capability to get on the field right away if Simmons can go at some point during the season. But outside of the DB room, it's hard to say where Ole Miss is going to lean towards. Maybe you see some linebacker, maybe some defensive mix in there at some point, but it seems like that wide receiver room is set. It seems like that running back room is going to be by committee this year. There may be a clear RB1 in Lacey or Diggs, but out of them two. But still, if you throw Chicago's Knight in the mix, Dominic Thomas is a really sturdy guy who seems like he knows how to throw some blocks as well. So I'm sure he'll be in the mix as well. So that RB room will probably be by committee. The main question for me is where are some of these freshmen going to fit in, especially on the offensive side of things. We don't know where Chicago's Knight will fit in once he gets to campus. Weenie Watkins is really impressed in that wide receiver room. And where do you put Caleb Cunningham once he gets to campus? Because, I mean, like he's one of the top players in the country, and history tells that if you don't play those guys, they enter the portal. So what do you do with Caleb Cunningham and some of these younger guys if they don't play right away?
I think it's similar to it's such a bad comparison, so bear with me, guys, but kind of what happened with Caden Lee his freshman year. I think you need to get him involved, and when their injuries take place, because they will. You know, you look at the history of every wide receiver in college football, the boys get banged up a little bit, and when that happens, Cunningham has to get some snaps, or else the phone's going to be ringing. He's going to be back in Tuscaloosa. We're in the blink of an eye. Money talks. We all know that in today's era of college sports. So I hope Cunningham has the patience to develop into the main guy at Ole Miss, because I think the future is, maybe we're talking about a first-round pick here, but it's difficult when you have, I mean, just off the top of my head, 4 or 5 power 4 wide receivers who've proven that they can get it done at this level. And Cunningham's coming in here, didn't enroll in the spring, and now he's getting thrown into this situation where, yeah, he's probably not going to see the field a whole lot in those big-time marquee matchups. So I think you have to get him some sort of experience, even in, high-leverage situations, because the last thing you want is for this to turn into another Aiden Williams situation. So you kind of have to avoid that, but it's a great question, Cam. And again, I really am curious to see where he slides in here. And then, in my opinion, I think you have to go get another quarterback, because I don't know if Maddox's hand is broken, but for those who don't know, A.J. Maddox is walking around with a cast around his hand. Not going to go into the rumors of it because I don't know the facts, but he's banged up. Don't know if it's broken. Don't know if it's sprained. Don't know if there's a bone tweaked in there. But the Clarkson kid, I'm sure he's a great guy. Unfortunately, his deep ball just doesn't look the same as even Jackson Dart, who we know, in my opinion, Austin Simmons and A.J. Maddox both can throw the ball further than Jackson. So in this Ole Miss offense, which is propelled by long throws down the field, I don't know how good he would be as your backup. So another quarterback maybe, but other than that, I think the team's shaping out to be okay. We're continuing to do pretty well in high school recruiting. Another commit tonight that we'll touch on briefly, but I think that this team is in an okay spot through the additions that you would expect them to go grab in the portal here.
Absolutely. It's going to be an interesting time leading up to the 2025 season and see where these guys fall into place and see where this depth chart kind of shakes out, especially in some of these more crowded rooms like the receiver room, the linebacker room. It's pretty crowded if you think about it now, especially when TJ Daugherty and Perkins come back from their injuries. And then that O-line room, I feel like, is kind of crowded as well, especially with some younger guys in that O-line room that can kind of propel their way into a starting lineup at some point for Ole Miss. But I think that's all we got for spring side of things. We'll jump into a little bit of, like Zach said, the high school recruiting for Ole Miss. Two commits here in the past couple of days for the Ole Miss football team. First one was 3-star corner Braylon Williams from Tupelo High School, just down the road from Oxford. 6 foot, 175-pound corner. Really good in the press from the highlights that I watched from him. Hard cuts to the football. It doesn't seem like he's afraid to go make some tackles in space, and he has the ability to make up some lost ground when he loses some of that space to faster receivers. It seems like Ole Miss is heavy in the portal. I mean, heavy in the high school recruiting class every year with the DBs, every year with the D linemen. We'll probably see more and more of these DBs and D linemen getting hooked to Ole Miss and maybe even committing at some point. But Braylon Williams seems like he's going to be one of those guys that comes here in the spring and gets some reps and hopefully develops into a player like TJ Banks has and stays at Ole Miss and develops in this Pete Golden defense, because it seems like Pete Golden just goes after the guys that he wants in these high school classes and just hopes they'll stay and develop in this program.
He's a great start. And there's another Tupelo guy. I want to say his name's Jarraylen McCoy, but he's a big-time defensive, maybe end, maybe D tackle. He's a huge kid, and they want him. Ole Miss wants him badly. So to get his high school teammate is a great start. And literally what you just said, Pete Golding just raids these high 3-star DBs. And, you know, if you get a platoon of 4 or 5 of them in each high school class, the odds that one or maybe 2 of them are going to turn out to be starters at your school one day are pretty damn high. So another kid who is going to grow a little bit, really lengthy. It's the perfect Pete Golding guy who can play safety, DB, press coverage. He can go tackle in the run. So a great addition. And then another guy on the offensive end who we can touch on here as well, Cam.
Yeah, absolutely. And 3-star quarterback Reese Wise, that is, just committed today, or I think it may have been yesterday. Either way, graphic popped up on my screen today from Westlake High School in Texas. And if you didn't know, that's a pretty historic high school when it comes to quarterbacks. That's 7A football in Texas. That's no joke out there. We know that when it comes to high division football, it's Texas, it's California, it's Florida, it's those big states. And they pump out quarterbacks out there. And if you don't know, Westlake High School has Super Bowl MVP Drew Brees, Super Bowl MVP Nick Foles, Texas pretty much legend, and Texas is back, folks, Sam Ellinger, and current Clemson quarterback Cade Klubnik. So they pump out some quarterbacks at that high school. Reading off his stats, 2,598 yards last year as a junior and 20 touchdowns and 7 interceptions led Westlake to a 14-2 record in 16 games. Also rushed for 15 touchdowns. The year before that, 1,800 yards, 21 passing touchdowns, 11 rushing touchdowns. So this kid seems like a physical player. I didn't get the chance to watch his highlights really, but 6'2", 220 pounds, seems like he's kind of got one of those dart builds. Seems like from the running stats, he kind of has like that dart running style where he's probably a heavy running quarterback that will probably duck his shoulder on some guys and fight for some yards. Talking with Zach before the pod, it seems like this is a sneaky pickup for Ole Miss. That, I mean, you go and pick up a high 3-star at a really high division in Texas. That if he has another good season at Texas, he could probably sneak up to a 4-star. And this is a kid that's probably going to be considered your backup once he gets to campus.
Look, Lane Kiffin, we can complain about the play calls and all this different stuff, but what he knows how to do is maximize, you know, the talent level of how all these high school quarterbacks that he recruits. So there's no question that this kid who's playing at one of the best high schools in the country for football in Texas is going to come in here and make an impact from day one. We saw AJ Maddox, he was a 4-star, but wasn't really a high, really touted 4-star. He came in, and now he's literally the backup for Austin Simmons, and man, does he look the part in practice. Kid can absolutely sling it. So you get the guys who play in competitive fields throughout high school who have the Division I Power 4 makeup. They're going to come in here and be effective. So a great start. And a big-time piece, a kid who seems like he's going to go and be that leader and go help recruit players in that Texas area, you would hope.
Absolutely. I think that's all we got for the football side of things. Make sure to keep up with the rebelwalk.com for any of that transfer portal news that we got for you guys once that portal cycle opens up for the spring. Obviously, the NFL draft will be later this month. I think that's starting on April 24th. Keep an eye out. Could be 3, 4, maybe even 5 Ole Miss guys go in that first round. It seems like Dart's gaining some heavy traction to go about mid-first round, early, maybe a little bit early. Maybe my Saints draft them. Who knows what the Saints do there? It seems like the Saints don't take quarterbacks in the first round. I don't think the Saints actually have taken a quarterback in the first round since Archie Manning. So it would be another Ole Miss quarterback if they go Dart there. A lot of traction with Dart to the Giants, too. If the Giants take him, obviously the history there with Eli Manning. So wherever Dart goes, I'm sure it'll probably be somewhere where he can develop and not start right away. Edie sent us a little link earlier of Colin Cowherd saying that Jackson Dart was the next Zach Wilson. Let's just say Colin Cowherd's the same guy that said Ben Simmons was the next LeBron James. So we're not going to listen to what Colin Cowherd says on his TV show on Fox Sports. We don't really care about that. Jackson Dart's going to do what he does. And maybe it's Zach Wilson. Maybe he's one of the better quarterbacks to ever come out of Ole Miss. Who knows? Best of luck to those guys coming up in the draft, though, here soon at the end of the month. But that's all we got for football so far. Moving into baseball to finish things off. Heartbreaking weekend in Oxford this weekend, but just like I said to plenty of people, if Ole Miss gets away from this weekend with one win, that's all you can ask for. And not only did you get away with one win, you had a chance to win all 3. And despite Liam Doyle just absolutely dominating on Friday night in his return to Oxford with 8 innings pitched, seemed like he was probably going to go 9 if he didn't go out there in the ninth, and I think it was a walker, a hit that he gave up right away. They kind of knocked him off the mound. But anyways, only gave up the 2 runs with the bomb to Austin Foley right there later in the game to make it a 3-2 game. 14 strikeouts for Liam Doyle in his return. Fisher obviously didn't start out great, kind of ended the weekend a little bit better, 4 for 10 on the weekend with 2 doubles and a homer. Just your overall thoughts on that series, Zach, and those 2 guys returning to Oxford.
Doyle just put his foot in every Ole Miss fan's throat. This was hard to just even look at, dude. I saw the video on Instagram of like all the chirping he was doing throughout the game, which it's the world we live in, right? If I was Doyle, come back to my old school, I'd probably be yapping it up a little bit too. But I like the video. I'm trying to cope with this the best that I can, Cam, because yeah, he absolutely dominated. And on the flip side, I do want to give some flowers to our guy, Mason Morris, who is just a game changer. If Hunter Elliott limits a couple of those hits and a couple of those rallies from Tennessee early on, you win the game, dude. It's unbelievable. And again, the loss, I really just dislike Tennessee. I'm having difficulty talking about it, but Cam said it. You could have beat this team 3 times, and not only are they a top 5 team, but they won the national championship last year, returned some of those guys, got your 2 best players from your 2024 roster. So to hang with them 3 for 3 and beat them that middle game, which didn't really feel close at times, I thought Ole Miss proved that they can hang with anyone in the country. And it's going to come down to what we've said all year, and that's bullpen pitching. This is going to be the make or break type games when you get late into late April here, and then eventually May and maybe even June. But yeah, I'm just so upset. Having the lead at the top of the 9th, another problem, no disrespect to Braden Jones, but when you got a guy with an ERA over 8 coming in to save the game against one of the best offenses in the country, it might go wrong. And I hate that because Braden was so reliable last year. He's struggling a little bit, but just a poor situation. And I don't know what's going on with Connor Spencer, but I'm hoping it's injury related. If you go back and listen to Mike's post game, he told the media Spencer wasn't even an option. He was not even an option. Warm-up coat on all game. He was not going in to close the game on Sunday. And he only threw 28 pitches the day before. So Ole Miss has got to find a closer. And you need to get that more consistent version of Will McCausland, who I thought was great. If you compare him a little bit throughout Saturday and Sunday, I think Ole Miss is in an okay spot to compete for, regional, maybe supers, but that bullpen is definitely going to make or break. I want to give some flowers to the offense too while I'm at the topic, because they were incredible. And Luke Hill, all those guys, Hayden Federico, watching him on Saturday. The kid's going to be a stud. So a lot of good and bad from this weekend, but you got one. You're easily a top-ranked 25 team, and you prove that you can hang with the big dogs.
Absolutely. Big weekend for Austin Foley. He went 5 for 12 with 3 homers, 6 RBIs. Luke Hill just seems to show up at all times this year for Ole Miss. He's the player now that Ole Miss thought he was going to be last year. He's going to be a pretty high pick in the draft coming up this year. Hayden Federico is the most surprised freshman in the country, in my opinion. It seems like he was on nobody's radar to start the season, and now he's on everyone's radar. The kid just gets on base. And I said that last year a lot about Campbell Smithwick. Campbell Smithwick hasn't really had his fair share of good doings this year for Ole Miss, other than he did have the home run against Kentucky as well, though. But seems like Hayden Federico just gets on base, man, whether it's a restone era, infield single, a single into the outfield up the middle. He walks. I think he leads this team in walks, actually. So it seems like Ole Miss is really good in the batting lineup, and that batting lineup can keep you in the game at times. And they showed that throughout the weekend, especially on Sunday when they went down 7-3, came back and tied the game up with a chance to win it and took the lead late in the game there. It seems like this Ole Miss team is in a spot where they can probably host a regional, and can they host a regional? I mean, this is a team that seems like they're going to win probably the rest of their midweek games, and who knows, you might not drop another SEC series. I've talked about it with a lot of people. This is probably the hardest series that you have left that just passed by in Tennessee. You do have Vandy coming in a couple of weeks. You have to go on the road to Oklahoma. You have to finish the year in Auburn. Obviously, State's not going to be easy in Starkville, but State's not the program that everyone thought they were going to be this year. But it seems like Ole Miss has an easier path than most SEC teams. I do think maybe, like Zach said, the bullpen's struggling a little bit. I do think maybe you move Dennis out of that midweek start, especially what he did this past weekend, move him into the weekend bullpen and give some of those young guys some starts in the midweek, like Cade Townsend, Taylor Rabe, some of those other guys. Let them develop in the midweek. Let Dennis and those other guys and Canny. Where was Canny this weekend? That was a big thing too. Alex Canny was nowhere to be found this weekend. I think he did pitch in the midweek games against Auckland State and Memphis, but nowhere to be found on the weekend, especially after a big weekend and the thumbs down that he gave Kentucky to end the game there in that Kentucky series. But Candy was nowhere to be found. Spencer was nowhere to be found on Sunday. It's definitely some questionable calls by the referees, by the umpires in that game on Sunday as well. But nothing you can do to control that. If you're Ole Miss, you got to kind of eat it and move on. Did kind of drop a little bit lower than I expected in the D1 baseball rankings. I assumed that Ole Miss was probably still going to be in the top 10, especially after a really competitive weekend. 33,000 people or more in Oxford this weekend in a total of 3 games. It was just a crazy atmosphere, probably one of the best atmospheres in college baseball right now, if not the best. Ole Miss did move down 5 spots in the rankings, though, to number 11. Kind of tough there, but kind of got to eat that. Don't look at those rankings too much, and I think you just got to focus on hosting a regional, Zach.
Yeah, it's just one game at a time, one series at a time thing. And look, you said it, man, but I just can't believe how I don't really enjoy saying easy, but compared to the teams that Ole Miss had, for me, I'm trying to, say this is the best way possible, but looking at the schedule before the season, I was like, this is an absolute gauntlet. Florida, going to Carolina, hosting Tennessee, hosting Vandy, going to State. Wow, man, this might be a really rough year for Mike Bianco. And going to Kentucky, who swept us last year. And it turns out almost more than half those teams are nowhere near the level that they were the year before. So now you have an opportunity to win every single SEC series and really put yourself in a position for the Rebs to get hot and hopefully try and go on a little bit of a run here. But this offense, the energy, it's really just convincing based on what we've seen the past 2 years. So shout out to, guys like Hale and Furness who have really stepped up and led this team and have done an awesome job. And like you mentioned it briefly, Cam, but the evaluation on Austin Foley, that kid's a dog, man. He really didn't do anything in Kentucky last year. And he comes in, hits a homer in every game against Tennessee. Yeah. How about that, dude? What a surprise. So love what we're seeing there. And again, this team has a lot of room to grow. So I'm excited, trying to take that, glass half full mindset moving forward. But another big opportunity tomorrow, and then going to Carolina this weekend.
Absolutely. And you probably want to get to 17, 18 wins to feel comfortable in hosting a regional spot. Ole Miss is at 9 right now. I think it's possible to get to 20 here in the next 15 games. Obviously, you have to go 11-4 to get to 20 and host a super regional, but it's very possible for Ole Miss to host a regional and bring playoff baseball back to Oxford. And I think that's the real goal. If you talk to anybody on the team, if you talk to anybody in the fan base, especially after the way that these last 2 years were, it's time to host baseball again in Oxford. This is a premier blue blood program that is used to doing this every year, and it's time to bring that back here. Like Zach said, Ole Miss will be back at home against Little Rock tomorrow. That'll be Kids Day at 11 a.m. Probably be a lot of kids there. Ole Miss wasn't a really good team last year, and they had 7,000 kids there in attendance for that one that were going crazy anytime you just put a ball in play. So I'm sure there'll probably be 7,000 or more there tomorrow as well for Kids Day. There won't be a double midweek game this week. So Ole Miss will play on Thursday against South Carolina on the road. That'll be a Thursday, Friday, Saturday series. South Carolina hasn't looked very good. Second worst record in the SEC, 20-17 and 2-13 in the SEC. They beat State once and they beat OU once for their 2 wins. They've been swept 4 times this year, 3 of those by SEC teams, once by Clemson. They just come off being swept by Texas A&M. Texas A&M has been gaining some traction, but Texas A&M isn't really a great team so far this year. State put a beating on them twice. So it doesn't seem like this is a team Ole Miss should lose to. I think if you look at their schedule, it seems like South Carolina is competitive in at least 1 or 2 of those games on the weekend against SEC teams. So Ole Miss is going to have to play some good baseball this weekend to sweep, but I think it is very capable that they sweep this weekend. This is a team that's batting .275. That's almost last in the SEC. They've only hit 41 home runs. To put that in perspective, Ole Miss is at 71, and they're 4th in the SEC. The pitching matchup this weekend for South Carolina, I know I say this every week, and sometimes I'm not right, but it does seem like I was right last week for Tennessee. I think it'll be right this week for South Carolina, considering some of these guys are kind of dead set. Jake McCoy on the game 1 start for South Carolina seems pretty consistent. Dylan Eskew in that game 2 start, probably their guy. It seems like he doesn't allow a lot of base knocks. He does walk a lot of people, but looking at his batting average against opponents, he's only allowing .179 batting average right now for opponents, and he's walking guys. So I don't know what it is there. Maybe he's like a Riley Maddox type of pitcher where he throws the sinker and gets the ground balls, but he's really good in that game 2 start for them, and that's really where they compete a lot. South Carolina does in that game 2 games on the weekends. And then Jarvis Evans Jr. and Matthew Becker, it'll be between those 2 guys in the Sunday spot. If you don't see the other one starting, you'll probably see the other one right behind them. And obviously on the bats for South Carolina, Ethan Petrie, we know about him. He bats .351 this year with 10 homers and 33 RBIs. He'll be in that 3 or 4 spot for South Carolina. If they get guys on base and he gets up to bat, it's going to be dangerous spots for the Ole Miss pitchers. Don't want that to happen. Another guy's going to be batting in front of Ethan Petrie, but I do believe he was hurt this past week is Nathan Hall. I think he got hurt in either game 1 or game 2 against Texas A&M, and I don't think he played the back half of that series. But he bats .355. He's hit 5 home runs this year, 28 RBIs, and he steals bags. He's stolen 11 bases this year. So those 2 guys are the guys to watch in that lineup for Ole Miss. This is a 28-9 Ole Miss baseball team. Ole Miss hasn't been able to even sniff that here in these past couple of years. You had a chance to reach 10 SEC wins this weekend. This week coming up, you got a chance to be 12-6 and sweep and put yourself in a really good spot to host the regional. And that's really all I got for baseball. I mean, this is a team that's like me and Zach have been saying, this is a team that's got a lot of potential, a lot of young pieces. I mean, Owen Pena was a guy that we thought was going to be unbelievable this year for Ole Miss. And it turns out Luke Chang is the best batter in SEC play on this team. I mean, Luke Chang's batting .400 in SEC play for Ole Miss baseball. I mean, he gets hit in the face by a baseball every game, and he still goes out there and plays. So this Ole Miss team has some grit. I think Judd Udemark said it in the interviews this past weekend that the difference between this team this year and the past 2 years is this team really just plays really well together. They communicate well on the field. They spend a lot of time together in the offseason as a bunch and just kind of engulfed into being a better program this year and getting this program back to being a blue blood. And like I said, the big question for Ole Miss baseball right now is, can you bring playoff baseball back to Oxford?
and you hope you can, Cam. They're putting themselves in a position to do so. Another really good opportunity. I'm hoping to see some of the bullpen kinks get worked out. I want to see Gunnar Dennis eat up some more innings. I want to see a really dominant start from Hunter Elliott. And let's keep this offense rolling, man. They've been killing it so far, winning Ole Miss a lot of games, keeping Ole Miss in a lot of those competitive losses. So right now the ball's rolling in the right direction, but you got to keep that momentum and go take at least 2 down there at Carolina.
Absolutely. I think that's all we got for you guys today. Make sure to keep up with Ole Miss baseball this weekend as they head to South Carolina. Like I said, they'll be playing Kids Day tomorrow at Swayze as well. Keep up with the men's basketball transfer portal tracker and the women's side of things as well. Keep an eye out for football commits in the spring and the end of spring football practice coming up here. NFL draft obviously coming up. Also forgot one thing for the women's side of things. Madison Scott was drafted today in the second round with the second overall pick in the second round at 14th overall by the Dallas Wings. Paige Beckers was drafted number 1 overall by the Dallas Wings. So she'll be joining Paige Beckers in Dallas here in a couple weeks to play in the WNBA. So congrats to Madison Scott. She was great here these past couple years at Ole Miss. Pretty much an Ole Miss legend, probably the best one that I've seen in my time watching Ole Miss women's basketball. So congrats to her. I think that's all we got for you guys today. Make sure to subscribe to the Rebel Walk. Make sure to subscribe to the Rebel Walk YouTube channel to keep up with the podcast. Leave a like and comment on this video to kind of get the algorithm in your feed. Subscribe to me and Zach on social media. Subscribe to the Rebel Walk on social media. And make sure to tune into the rebelwalk.com for all your Ole Miss sports needs.